Hebrews chapter 2, last verse in what we have as chapter 2, verse 18. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. Now, the Gospels give an account of how after Jesus' baptism, he went into the wilderness and was tempted. He fasted for 40 days and was tempted by the devil there. I got that. But the Hebrew writer says he suffered when he was tempted. That I hadn't thought of. I mean, I've read this, 40 times, and it didn't register with me that Jesus suffered when he was tempted. We do too. So what, and that is why God designed that Jesus would suffer in his temptations, because God already knew that we would suffer in temptation as well. Temptation and trial, as I understand it, the Greek word for both of those is the same. That a temptation and a trial, it's the same Greek word. There are times when we're tempted. I mean, Satan is tossing out an opportunity for us to choose sin over truth and righteousness. And that happened to Jesus. Those three classic temptations that we have recorded. But the trials, I don't so much suffer in temptation as I suffer in trials. And some of this is just because I'm just weak. The trials are often more difficult for me than temptations. At my age, a number of things that truly tempt me has begun to reduce itself. The trials, they're not going away. Temptations are not going away. It's part of the human condition. Have you ever wondered, why would God set it up this way? That we could be tempted and we would experience trials. Was that like he needed some means to be able to judge our sincerity, our authenticity, so that he could grade us? No, not even close. In my opinion, and James expresses this opinion, we're tempted, we experience trials in order to produce perseverance and completeness in us. Jesus wasn't insulated from that. I've said it before on this. I mean, I think last time I talked about how Jesus didn't experience trials and temptations so that he would know what we felt like when we went through these. He's God. He already knows all that. So why would he? Okay. So that I would know that he knows. Because he experienced it. Okay. Chapter 3. Therefore, holy brothers, who share in the heavenly calling, who's he talking about? Talking about you and me. Fix your thoughts on Jesus, the apostle and high priest whom we confess. He was faithful to the one who appointed him, just as Moses was faithful in all God's house. Well, okay. Now, in the first, what we have is the first two chapters. The Hebrew writer, I wish I knew who that was, and I'd call them by name, but I'm just going to, the writer, that's what it's going to be. But the writer spends, in what we have as chapters 1 and 2, making the strongest case possible, I think, that Jesus is greater than the angels. He's supreme. Well, he's going to introduce a new or an additional concept here. Therefore, holy brothers who share in the heavenly calling, stop, pause. I don't consider myself holy very often. Maybe a minute or two here and there. But here's the thing. My holiness is not dependent on my perfection. Really? No. My holiness depends on the righteousness of Jesus, because he stood in my place. He took my punishment. He cleansed me so that I could be holy. And to think of myself as a holy brother, yeah, that's big. And you realize that without hindering or liberalizing the interpretation, when in the New Testament the wording is holy brothers, you could include sisters. You could almost say siblings who share in the heavenly calling. I love that there is a calling above every other calling, and that is my calling toward heaven. And I get to share in that holy calling with people like Mary and Martha and the mother of Jesus, and Peter and James and John and Paul and Timothy, and fix your thoughts on Jesus. How do I do that? I'm not very good at it. There are times I wonder, maybe I have ADD or something. I know it's not ADHD because I'm not hyper, but I am so easily distracted. Fixing my thoughts on most anything is so challenging to me. I think it is for a lot of us. And we live in a noisier world now than it has ever been. There are more data coming at us in various forms than there has ever been. We are overloaded. And even if you're not addicted to television or the internet or your social media, you're getting way more input than your grandparents ever got, and probably more input than your parents ever got. When that is the case, it's hard to fix your thoughts on anything. Okay, I have a tendency to fix my thoughts on the negative possibilities, and this because I'm challenged in the area of trust. I'm not very optimistic, and I don't like that about myself. I want to try and, with the help of God, His Spirit and His grace, I want to become less pessimistic, and one of the ways to do that is to monitor where I am fixing my thoughts. I realized not very long ago that I have gotten into a habit of fixing my thoughts on the past, and very often on mistakes I've made or failures I've experienced. And I go back and replay and relive and replay and that's just stupid. I can't fix anything on that. Well, okay, part of my thing is I want to harvest anything I can out of that so I don't have to repeat that mistake or that failure. Okay, but you don't have to go back and dig the body up out of the grave. Instead of fixing my thoughts on all the noise and static in the world that's coming at me, or fixing my thoughts on all my failures and all the potential bad, what if I fixed my thoughts on Jesus? You don't accidentally fix your thoughts ever. Because what the Hebrew writer is saying is, in order for Jesus to be our focus, we must fix our thoughts on him. And okay, I'm going to bang this drum again. I think most Christians don't know enough about Jesus to be able to do that. They haven't really absorbed his biography enough to know his story. What are you going to fix your eyes on if you don't know him? Now, I will say this, though, and I know I'm kind of scattergunning it here, but here's the deal. We can know a lot about Jesus and not know him. And to fix our thoughts on him is a part of a process of knowing him. I want to challenge you that if you haven't in the last year read through the Gospels, do it. You can read through the Gospels in 30 days by reading 3 chapters a day. And maybe a couple of days you'll read 4 chapters. But that's not a Herculean task. You could do that. And in fact, there's a reading plan on the YouVersion that is called The Gospels in 30. I've been using that all this year and reading the Gospels over and over and over again. And I'll finish the year and still think I don't know enough about him. But to fix my thoughts on him, I got to spend time contemplating him, meditating on his story. And we have it so much better than these first century believers and followers of Jesus, because the written Gospels are so available to us. Wasn't that way in the first century? Okay. Fix your thoughts on Jesus. Be intentional. When in the day will you do this? You might need to write it into your day planner or your calendar. It's an appointment. Make an appointment to fix your thoughts on Jesus. Okay. And then the writer goes on, the apostle and high priest whom we confess. I thought there were 12 apostles. Well, there's actually more than 12 apostles, but this word for apostle means one sent. So what we generally think of as the 12 apostles, these were designated by Jesus after a whole night in prayer, and they became his most intimate circle of companions. And within that, his very most intimate circle of Peter, James, and John. But to think of Jesus as our apostle, well, he was sent. John 3:16, you know that. For God so loved the world that he sent his one and only Son. Okay, high priest. Okay, every Jew could get that. And so, okay. Verse 2, he was faithful to the one who appointed him, just as Moses was faithful in all God's house. Man, the faithfulness of Jesus is incredible. And we'll come back to that next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy. I hope to see you then.